Just when I thought I couldn't find my way out, yeah, I searched the God in me to find my way out. I know it can seem way out, but the Creator flows to and through me from way out. I'm talking way out, yeah, yeah, yeah. See, if you believe in the God in you, it's a better place. Creating the force and the power to live a better place. Just know that love and joy and peace is one in all of the same space. That you were chosen just like God. That's right. Only you can make the change. Shine your head at you. Shine so bright from darkness to light. From darkness to light. Yeah. And you'll find your way out. Yeah. Oh, it won't seem way out. Yeah. The power of God will flow through you from way out.
Normally I do my show on the vertical and the horizontal screen. Today I'm just like testing out only horizontal. But on Sonnetter, there was some questions about the divine feminine and the Aj when it comes into Yoruba culture and society. And it got into like, the woman with the beard, right? So let's get into this live stream that we did with Dr. Kumari. And she really discussed a lot of these concepts, in this live stream. So without further ado, let me just go ahead and let's go. Oops, sorry about that. Let me just let's go ahead and play it. Let's go. It is in Ota and Ibadan, Nigeria. She is also a historian and African. And the panel's open, guys. If anybody wants to come up. She is the Oba Albinrin Olokun Omilere, United States. Iya Abiye in Obani, Otun Yeye Amun Fawuni, and Iya Mode Egungun. She has a formal education in sociology, theology, and naturopathy, and was college director and professor in natural and allied health for 16 years. She is currently the head of Ashe Soul Global Village and director of the Ori Institute. As an author of 4 books, she offers lectures and presentations around the globe. Her work is known for healing, wisdom, and practical knowledge to improve the quality of lives she touches. She is a professional diviner, traditional healer, and priest, and grandmother of 9. Her website is ayelekumari.com and ashesoul.com, amongst others. And without further ado, I would like to welcome to Alchemizing Energy, Dr. Chief, Dr. Ayele Kumari. Welcome to Alchemizing Energy. I want to say this. I'm going to play a little bit of this, and then we're going to get into the elites and go into the elites and the entire thing about what their religion is after this. Let's go.
Thank you very much.
I hope that was a good introduction, right?
That was fine. That was perfectly fine. Yeah.
Yes. So we did a show that we talked about Otora Meiji. That was the first Odu that came out for the United States. But prior to that, there is the Osa Meiji that came out, and that is dealing with the Iyami. Can you break down Osa Meiji and its connection to Iyami? And for those that don't know what Iyami is, that might be watching this for the first time, never heard of Ifa, never heard of that, could you kind of break that whole thing down? That's a lot. That was a crazy question.
So in the West African Orisha tradition, in the wisdom tradition, we understand knowledge by breaking it down into 16 core elements. And within those 16 core elements are 16 other core elements. It produces what we call Odu. And Odu are each categories of wisdom and how we understand the universe and so on. As a part of that, one of those Odus is called Osa Meiji. And Osa Meiji specifically talks about the divine feminine, the sacred mothers, the mothers of creation, the mothers who govern the earth, and the mothers who govern our existence, as well as our ancestral mothers. So there's different layers of motherhood, womanhood, feminine energy, and so on that is covered within Osa Meiji. But each category, each Odu, is its own expansive set of encyclopedias, if you will, of information and knowledge. It is broken down by ecology, life events, situational nature, all of the things, the elements, anything that is in existence that we call Aye. And anything even connecting to that which we cannot see, the invisible realm, which we call Orun, are all tied into those Odus. And so that's a very quick, it probably insufficient summary, but that, because we have so much to talk about, that's the summary I'll give.
Okay, so what role do the Iami play in that Odu of Osa Meiji?
So there's different levels of motherhood. And so Iami can show up both as your own individual mother and your mother's line, the feminine line, all the way back to the first mothers. So in that way, they're the ancestral mothers. It can also show up as Mother Earth, Onile, who is the mother of this planet. Nothing happens. We all live here. We all depend on it. So Iami can also refer to Ile in that regard. And all of the elements that go inside of this earth plane in and of itself. Iami can also speak about the cosmic mothers, and the cosmic mothers' role in creation is that they were here first. Now we understand it in terms of these are the mothers who guide and balance the entire, not just the earth, but the universe. They were a part of creation in and of itself. Part of their job is to maintain the sacred balance so that the world continues on. It also is justice, balance, and so on. Spiritually, their ultimate job is to raise us. And what I mean by raise us is, what does a mother do? They raise children. They nurture us, they raise us, they discipline us, they check us, they teach us, they guide us. They do all of these things. Many people, it's just like the role of your typical mother in that regard, only it expands beyond the universe. So if there's an issue planetary, if there's an issue with a group of people, if there's an issue with individuals and so on and so forth, and particularly if that issue is throwing off the balance of the community, of the earth, of nature, or so on and so forth, it's going to bring in these mothers. It's going, those cosmic mothers in that regard. So their job is layered. It's not one dimensional, two dimensional. It's going to show up in a number of different ways.
So I wanted to play something right quick that it deals with Osa Meiji. It actually, Umar Johnson was actually doing an interview, and he was discussing what was going on currently when it comes down to the feminine spirit, the female spirits, and Osa Meiji. Let's play it a little bit.
Struggling to build your sales pipeline? Finding the best prospects feels impossible? Meet Katie, your AI SDR agent. Katie uses 50 plus data sources and buying signals.
An energy pattern that oversees or rules or influences that calendar year. You with me? The energy pattern for 2026, June 6th, 2026 to June 5th, 2026 is known as Osa Meiji. Stay with me on this. Osa Meiji. Osa Meiji, to make it simple, because this is a very big thing, but I'm going to make it real simple. Right. Osa Meiji is the energy pattern of the great invisible mothers. This is feminine energy loom. It is not evil, but it is in the dark. It is the energy of women, spirits, female spirits, not human beings. These are feminine spirits that God created before he even made this planet. You see, their job is to oversee the balance of the universe, right and wrong. They are the overseers and the protectors of Black women, feminine energy. And for men who don't treat women well, they can destroy your life. Why am I bringing this up, Loon? For you, for me, for him, for every Black man in the world. This is not the year to be playing around with women. You hear what I'm telling you? Mm-hmm. You playing with this one, but she want more? Make her your queen, let her go. Yeah. If you're a polygamist, let her know, let her decide. This is not the year to play with the hearts, minds, and emotions of women, because this is the year of the primordial mothers. These spiritual energies will whip your ass. I'm telling you right now, if any of your homies hit you up and say, Loon, I was just in a bad car accident. Loon, I just got diagnosed with this. Loon, I just lost this, right? Loon, my wife just left me. The first thing you should ask, how have you been treating women this year? Every year.
Interesting. What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts?
For the most part, he's there, but I think that it's important to understand Iami are not petty. By the time they have addressed an issue with you, they have tried in many different ways to get you to act right. By the time it comes to that you are being specifically addressed in a way that checks you, it is not just this year. It is the accumulated things in years before. It is an accumulated thing that has happened that can cause that. But I also want to make sure that people also understand that there's another aspect. The justice is absolutely, it's there. The addressing wrongs and right, it's also there. But one of the biggest things that people don't know about Iyami is the massive healing presence of the Great Mothers, the massive healing energy of Iyami. Iyami is connected to healing. And it's bigger than just punishment, right? It is also supporting the healing, the elevation, the continuation of the earth. The justice that they're interested in is justice, especially as it relates to when balance has been offset, when things have been off, and it has created an imbalance in the world, and so on and so forth. So you have to look at this. You have to kind of consider when you're dealing with Iyami, we're not talking about small petty things, right? As he did say, and it is true, they were here before creation. And because of that, right? Think about that, right? Think about how many billions of years they've been in existence. There's nothing that they haven't seen in that regard, nothing. So they're very mystical in that regard, but they're not petty, right? They're addressing imbalance. As it relates to men, I will say Iyami is just as strict with women as it is with men. It's a misnomer that they only deal with men, because especially if you're one of their daughters, they will check you quicker than they will check the man. But I will say that when it comes to men, it's really about dominating masculine energy, oppressive masculine energy, and so on. And when that happens, you have to recognize that it throws the society off, it throws the family off, it can throw the children off. All of those things can influence that. And if the children are thrown off and the family is thrown off, then the communities is thrown off, and then the country and the greater society is thrown off, and then the earth is thrown off, right? Mm-hmm. So it is a residual effect, and it compounds with multiple people doing it and aggravating it, and so on and so forth. So rape, sexual assault, molestation, those kinds of things, on a small scale, absolutely they should be dealt with. But once they've also become a massive scale as well, now you're shifting the balance of the earth. Now you're shifting how the earth operates, and that's a problem.
You know, it's interesting. My mom used to say stuff like, "I brought you in this world, I'll take you out." And that's a very Iyami type of saying. I don't know if my mom was Iyami, but honey, my mom was a fierce woman. May she rest in peace. Modu, pray for her. But yes, Modu Peo. But like, yeah, she would be like, listen, you know, she was not playing. And so, what do you think? Why is it that the feminine spiritual power is often associated with the ability to both nurture and also destroy?
It's the nature of feminine energy. The nature of feminine energy is built on, let's look at the nature of the womb itself, right? The womb itself, it can create. Creation happens there, right? Any child that comes through, they have to come through the womb, right? That is the portal to a room. That's automatically there. It is a sustainer. It can sustain the child and sustain the baby and develop the baby, and so on and so forth. But if that child, or if that egg is not fertilized, right, then what happens? That egg, or the egg goes into the womb, and then it breaks down, and it creates what? The menstrual cycle, right? The menstrual cycle is
this is what we were talking about on Sadnetter. People get hung up on beards and that the beard is masculine. But the main overarching point is that when a woman is in her menstrual cycle, there's different cycles to life, you know, as far as a woman is concerned, you know, even for men, you know, men have their cycles as well, you know, of like when they become men, when they have like different aspects, like when you are 13, you can like, I mean, they have different levels of where their cycle is. But this is specifically touching on the feminine cycle, and that this cycle, the cycle that we're in now on this earth, is talking about a primordial cycle that is reaching back into this Iyami type of energy. So let's get into it. Take you out. And that's a very Iyami type of saying. I don't know if my mom was Iyami, but honey, my mom was a fierce woman. May she rest in peace. Modu, pray for her. But yes, Modu Peo. But like, yeah, she would be like, listen, you know, she was not playing. And so, what do you think? Why is it that the feminine spiritual power is often associated with the ability to both nurture and also destroy?
It's the nature of feminine energy. The nature of feminine energy is built on, let's look at the nature of the womb itself, right? The womb itself, it can create. Creation happens there. Right? Any child that comes through, they have to come through the womb, right? That is the portal to a room. That's automatically there. It is a sustainer. It can sustain a child and sustain the baby and develop the baby and so on and so forth. But if that child or if that egg is not fertilized, right, then what happens? That egg or the egg goes into the womb, and then it breaks down, and it creates what? The menstrual cycle, right? The menstrual cycle is a breakdown of the lining of the womb, and it is moving it out. So within the womb itself, it contains all of the elements of creation, sustainability, and destruction, all in one. So that's the nature of feminine energy. And it just is what it is. The nature of the feminine body itself, it gives you a better understanding of Iyami if you look at it esoterically, if you understand it esoterically. Even the breast are nurturing. They're designed for nurturing. I know some people think it's just sexual, but it is a nurturing thing. So this adds to another level. All of these are qualities that are a part of Iyami.
It's interesting you say that, because I've got into a lot of discussions where, when we talk about women being submissive, that there's a certain role in a woman's that women should be playing on this earth as submissive and not dominant, and that dominant energy or that anger and certain things that women have is not a female trait or a feminine trait. That submission is a feminine trait, and that being kind of nurturing is a feminine trait. However, that aspect to be angry or to be a warrior, that is not a feminine trait. So, but if you understand that that we have our dual sided, what is the understanding of that when it comes down to Iyami and the femininity?
Well, you again, nothing is just one dimensional. In terms of how people perceive, women are supposed to be submissive. Those are politics. They can be religious politics, political politics, but they are primarily politics. And they are politics that are perpetuated in order to ensure that there is one who is superior and one who is inferior, because many of the societies are based on caste systems. Somebody's got to be ahead of someone else, right? So all of those things are primarily politics. But when it comes to one, in the Ifa Risha tradition, and also when it comes to history, and also when it comes to nature, it's not that simple. It'd be cool to be that simple, but it's not that simple, because within West African tradition, we have warriors. And let me be clear about something. People, because you associated anger with warriors, and let me help you understand that a skilled warrior doesn't have to hold anger; they just have to hold purpose. It's not necessarily about anger or not anger, because anger can actually be a taboo, but purposeful, making a purposeful effect, and handling a job and doing a mission, that is not about anger. But more importantly, when it comes to what energy we hold the energy of fire, water, air, and earth in different aspects of our lives, and it shows up within the West African tradition. We have warriors. If you've seen the warrior, the woman king, you will see the warriors. We have the original West African Amazons. They were fighters. They were feminine, but they were fighters. Then you also have the queens. They were feminine. Or some of them were warriors. One of my Lito Risha Oya, she was a queen warrior. She fought next to and often in front of Shango. In fact, it is said that she could whoop Shango. So these are things that are not a part of our West African ancestry. These are things that are not part of our African ancestry, because we also have warriors who are in the Kikuyu and other traditions and so on, who were warriors and warrior queens, Ya, Santiwa, and so on. So when we take on the traditions and the belief systems of colonialists, of those who put us in captivity, of those who are not a part of our culture, and yet we accept them as our own, then we accept that as our truth, then that creates the confusion. And what it does when a woman does it, when anyone, if you accept an identity that is not who you truly are, if you identify in a way that is not how you were actually created to be, then it's going to eventually cause confusion. It's going to cause suppression. It's going to cause a problem in general. So, there are some women we consider to be very cool in water. Some of the Orisha are very cool, Oshun, cool, water, associated with coolness, patience. That doesn't mean that she won't fight, right? People have an association. They think, Oshun is cool. That doesn't mean she won't fight. She's just going to fight differently. She's going to fight in a different way than someone who might be in a direct warrior mode or otherwise. With Oshun's way of fighting sometimes is withdrawal. Baby, if water is what you need to survive, then not having water will kill you. It's just by withholding. So those are the type, when we look at qualities, we are drawing our qualities from our nature, not from a theological perspective.
Not having water, right? So Oshun, right? Withdrawing our water, what's happening right now with AI? The water is disintegrating, right? So listen, if you want to see the rest of that video, please go on to my channel. The actual show is called The Iami and the Divine Feminine and Osai Meiji. Please go and watch it. You'll see sister our sister up there, and she's going to be giving you all the details of how this actually runs down. I'm going to fast forward a little bit because I think that Nepal had like some points of contention when it comes to
men having Ori.
Of women with the beard, right? And I wanted to bring that up. I want to like show where she came up and where Sister Kumari, Dr. Kumari, addressed that aspect of like the woman with the beard, because she had like a contention about that. Well, that's masculine and this, that, the other. Well, guess what? This is where this conversation started at. So I'm gonna play that, and then we're gonna like close this out, and then we're gonna get into the elites and the ancient beliefs that affect us today. I'm not gonna do this on one podcast, but because I believe it deserves a subject of its own. But let's get into it. Let's go.
Absolutely. They just forgot the why. They forgot that it was a part of it's something they've always done. It's something that is very familiar, but it is something that you forgot the why.
And the usher board always wears white. It's always a bunch of older women wearing white.
It's the priestesses. You know, many of our initiatory traditions did carry on. They just couldn't carry on with regard to the names that they assigned to them, but many of them did. The white head wrap, right? I was looking, one of the signatures of someone who had undergone what they call the old religion. So they stopped really in African diaspora traditions, and even what became of hoodoo, right? It started from what they call the old religion. I practiced the old religion, and part of what practicing the old religion meant, you going out into nature for a time. You might be fasting, you might be by yourself or whatever it is, but you're connecting to nature and you're looking for a response from nature. And that begins to guide you into how you're going to move in your.
Let's go into that, because Sanetta said, well, what are we doing? What's our religion? Our religion are the ancient ways. And people Unc got up there and said, this is our religion. Yes, it's a religion. Isheshe is called the ancient ways. That is the religion. Ifa is the divination system. People need to understand the difference between the two. The Orisha is the actual energy pattern of beings that we associate that connect to the Odu, that connect to our bodies, who we are. But unless you know this and you into the system, you wouldn't know it all the way.
Or life. So that might be several days, that might be a month, it may be under a mentor or otherwise, but this is something that would be a part of that. And so you'd sit under a tree, you would lay under a tree, and then once that happened, then you would go to the river and you would get a river bath, and so on and so forth. So what they have that now, like the church that I grew up in, I didn't even realize it was one of those types of hoodoo churches. You would have to sit on the bench, right? And you sat on that bench every single Sunday until you got the Holy Spirit, right? And once you got the Holy Spirit, only then could you be baptized. So then you dress up in your white, and they had the white head rags, and we all went down to the river, right? And you would do the same things and so on. Those are initiatory rites that have been done since time immemorial. And that are also done in Africa. This is not just an Abrahamic thing, right? This is something that is done. It's almost a global indigenous thing that is done. And so you take many of those habits, the motherboard and how they dealt with things, and the white. So those people who had undergone those particular rites, they would wear a white head wrap. So you see, like in slave pictures, and even within slavery and right afterwards, there would be people with colored head ties, and there would be people with white head ties. And the people with white head ties were often the sign that that person had undergone some type of initiation. They were some type of healer. They were some type of doctor, spiritual doctor in some form or another. The names changed, the traditions changed. They just forgot the why.
Wow, that's man, that's crazy when you think about that. That this translated across the board. It got into Christianity, but people forgot. People don't even understand the connection. Wow.
Yeah, there's so many things they don't understand. Now, that wooden bench that you would sit on, that's what the tree translated to, that wooden bench that you would sit on, the mourner's bench. Yeah.
Dr. Kumari, may I ask you to talk to us about how in the Abrahamic faith, especially in Christianity, it's been used against women, saying you better cover your head if you pray. You know how they say there's a tradition, especially in very strict religions. I'm going to speak about the Hebrew Israelites and Islam. They, with that, that head wrap, they'll say, if you don't cover your head, the angels will come and take advantage of you as a woman, or you're an evil woman if you don't cover your head. Have you heard about that before?
I have, but I'm a theologian, so I studied them all, and I studied before they came into existence as well. So I have a layered answer to that, right?
I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear it.
The idea about covering one's head is not just them. This is about your crown. So if you recognize a spiritual crown, each of us have a spiritual crown and how it connects and so on. So there is something about covering your head, but not just for women, also for men, especially if you're undergoing spiritual rites. It's a form of protection in that regard, even with regard to the way that women dress and so on. So in those traditions, right? And I'm not saying that this is true. I'm going back to just in those traditions. The idea of covering oneself actually came from goddess traditions. It did not come from masculine traditions. It was then enforced and it was subjugated. It became a symbol of subjugation as men took over, but they came from goddess traditions because women represent the mystery. The mystery in those traditions, especially, so like before women were circling they were circling the Kaaba, it was a feminine energy, right? In Islam. And there were priestesses. There would be 7 priestesses, and they would be all covered, and they would be circling the Kaaba, right? And that is to bring about that energy, but it represented the mystery that you can't just roll up and see. It represented a mystery. So women's mysteries have always been the focus in figuring out how to crack the veil, right? That was an extension. So whether it was the habit that nuns wear, right? Or whether it was the name of it is
the hijab, the niqab, the hijab.
They're all doing the same thing, but they came actually from ancient goddess traditions. Many people don't know that. Even in wearing the color black, the black veil, and so on, because that represents the womb, right? And so on. So if we go back far enough, they didn't really invent anything. They just what is the word? They retold the story. They reinterpreted what it was supposed to be, right? So in that regard, you cannot. In our tradition, I wear head wraps all the time. But recently, I haven't. It's hot and so on.
Right.
I can wear them. I don't have to wear them. They don't define me. They don't limit me either. But if I'm undergoing certain spiritual ceremonies and things of that nature, I'm going to wear my head wrapped. If I'm dealing with other people and their traditions and I'm exposed to a lot of crazy energy, I'm at home. I don't have to wear one.
Right.
And I'm exposed to a lot of energy. I'm going to do some protections because I don't want to be exposed to everybody else's old funky energy.
Oh, wow. Thank you for that. Thank you for breaking that down. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
But it's a matter of protecting one's crown, right? We have in our tradition, our crown is called our Ori, and it is our divine connection to source. Each person has one. So there are certain rites that we might do on our head. And as a part of those rites, afterwards, we might cover our head and so on. So there are different reasons, but it's not, it's not the interpretation that we're often given as to why.
And thank you for that breakdown. That is that clears up a lot. I do want to mention also a part of the Bible where it says that a woman can be taken captive if a man wants her. And one of the rituals it says to do to her is shave her head and cut her nails. So is that must be like that spiritual energy that you're referring to?
The idea of shaving one's head. In our tradition, it doesn't just apply to women. Right?
Okay.
It applies to anyone if you're having some issues and so on. When we undergo our initiations, our rites require that we shave our heads. It's not just women, it's men too. You can't have locks.
Wow.
You can't have
beautiful.
Hair, but that is again, it is exposing your Ori because we are realigning your Ori to your divine purpose. Right? When it's imposed as a form of control and punishment, it shifts the whole meaning around it. Do you understand what I mean by that?
Yes, ma'am.
It shifts the whole energy around it. It's not just men. It's not just women that have an Ori. Men have an Ori. Men need to be clean. They need to every now and then they need their own ritual and cut off their hair and shave their heads and realign with source, however they perceive that source or that divinity to be. So it's our interpretations and how we translate things, right? It's the assumptions that we make. Most things are not bad in and of themselves. It's when it's imposed as a system of control and manipulation and domination that it becomes problematic.
Wow. When we talk about this, it's so interesting how you make it clear that it's not just women, it's men and women. And they're, I'm listening to you. I heard you say the thing about when you're soft and sweet, you still could be mixing up a real mean batch on somebody. So people use hair to work magic on people too, don't they? Don't they use their hair, or is that not true?
People can use hair. People can use any body any body thing or any energetic. People can use anything to impact you if you know what you're doing. It's not just hair. They can use a piece of your clothes. They can use any number of things to impact you. So it's not
they can use your picture, right? They can use your picture, right?
Image and whatever. You know, a lot of people use a lot of tools. I'll tell you something about Iyami energy and Aj energy, because there's Aj that energy that women carry naturally. Those that have that strong energy that carry it naturally through their bloodlines and so on, they don't need any of that stuff. They need a thought.
Talk. Wow.
Thought. That's it. Those who truly know, you don't need it. People can use all of those things, but those that have that kind of Aj energy that is very strong, they just need a thought.
That is why when I showed that Umar Johnson, he said that this year is not the year to be fooling around with based on Osameji, right? He talked about the Iyami energy that is that's happening. It's a very feminine primordial energy that this year is based on what Osameji being the Odu for the year. We talked about the Odu of the year and how that Iyami energy is prominent. It's not necessarily to be feared, but it's to be understood that, you know, divine justice can come into play if you don't get yourself right when it comes down to. But it's not a petty thing. It's not like, oh, you didn't take the trash out yesterday and now you're going to be
cosmic mothers. Now, women by themselves, a good example of that is the color purple Sealy, right?
Yeah.
What you do to me, already done to you.
Yes, thank you.
Right? All she said was a couple of words. He pointed. What you do to me is already done to you. That's that man has been convicted.
Yes.
He has been convicted. And you see how it manifests throughout the story. And while that is a fictional story, it's a very real phenomenon. It can be a very real phenomenon for when a woman's fed up. Right?
Yes.
So while there's cosmic, again, going back, there's the cosmic energy, there's the energy associated in earth, there's the ancestral mothers, there's the celestial mothers, and then there's women who are in existence that just carry a strong energy with them. That also have some forms of power. There are some men that carry energy from their mothers. They're called Osho, right? Who also carry that kind of energy as well. But they are in service to the mothers and the feminine energy.
Quick question. Do you think that this time with the Osameji, it's also important for women to watch what they say, because they could carry an Iyami energy, and what they say now can be more powerful than ever before? Like if you are say something against somebody, it can manifest a lot quicker. Do you think that could be a situation with this energy right now?
Absolutely. And that goes back to the need to learn self-restraint, self-mastery, emotional regulation, and to be calm and not reactionary. See, they all go together, right? Yes, you have that ability. Women can destroy their families. They can create the family. They can destroy their families. They can build up their children. They can tear their kids down, right? But no one.
I brought you in this world. I'll take you out, right?
It's true. It's true. But no one is exempt from the consequences of their actions. That's important to realize. No one is exempt from the consequences of their actions, right? That's why I say that if you use that, Iyami is just as much. They will come after women just as much as they'll come after men if you are unjust. If you are unjust, they will cut your money off too. If you are unjust, a lot of physical illnesses and so on and so forth can manifest as a form of consequence. I want to move away from punishment and move more into the idea of consequence when it comes to things that happen. There is a consequence. You can do what you want to do, but it's cause and effect. That doesn't exempt you from the consequences. So if you're thinking, many people, hey, he get on my nerves, and just say that you have that random thought, right? Someone that you actually really love, but you're just saying it casually, and then they mess around and they get into an accident, right? And deep inside what you said, and that could manifest, right? In that regard. That's why it's important. When women actually had the ability to go under training, when we had women's schools, you had to learn how to be a woman. Once your menstrual cycle started, or just before, there were rites of passage, and as a part of that, you learn self-restraint. It wasn't submission. It was self-restraint. It was self-control, right? It was how to look at things and view things, because you have to you're responsible for what you create and what you destroy.
And it was all based on the power of speaking things into existence, right? So this is where she's going to get into the cycles of female life, and how it starts off with the menstrual, then it goes in. Starts off give menstrual, then giving birth, and then into menopause. And this is the question that Nepal had. So let's go.
Responsible for it. So you can't just respond on a whim in that regard.
Because we have so much power.
Yeah,
Our power, we have a little bit more power.
Abuse of power, whether you're male or female, is still abuse of power. And sometimes, when we talk about that, you get angry because you feel powerless. The issue is sometimes not the person. The issue is that you have to take your power back. You've given it away. Now you're mad that somebody has abused it. And, but the issue is really you giving it away. So once you learn how to take your power back, you don't have to do that. Right? It ain't their fault. They were the test. They were just a test. How you respond, that's on you.
This is how to reach her.
So these are things that that have to balance. That have
these
to
are her
understand
websites.
Balance. Right? It's not just one thing. I'm a big advocate of women, and that is because we have spent thousands of years under oppression. Right? We have spent thousands of years, especially Black women, both with European oppression and patriarchal oppression in our own communities. So I'm a big advocate of that. But I'm not absent to the fact that there are many women who can manipulate and abuse power as well. You just do it differently. You might not beat them up, but with your tongue, you can cut a person apart, and they'll never forget that. They'll always be, they'll be stuck for the rest of their lives because of certain things that you said, because you have that kind of mache.
Wow. And with Iyami, why must the power of Iyami be respected by kings, priests, and other spiritual authorities? And do Iyami represent a form of feminine justice when social or spiritual balance has been violated?
Let me start with the king part. Because it is the mother's line that kings are born. When you look at kings in Africa, whether it from and I'll say, I won't say it because I don't know it's 3 or 5,000 ethnic groups. I can say from East Coast. Let's start with ancient kings, right? If we start with ancient kings in ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet, if we look at the crown of Osir, then we will see birds, right? One of the big signatures of Iyami are birds, right? These are beings that can move from the earth to the celestial realm, to the heavens, and so on. So you'll see within their crowns, within the Osir crown, you'll see it's a pointed crown, and it has 2 ostrich feathers on the side of it, right? That is the signature of Iyami, because the king's line came through the mother's line. It was the mother. They have to go through mother's rights, ancient women's rights. It is the women that crown the king. And without that, you don't have the ashe to be the king, right? So when they put that crown on, that crown itself is shaped like a womb. It literally is a womb. The crown of Osir is a womb. When we see that crown in Heru, right? Heru also becomes represented by the bird, hawk. It's another bird, right? So that is a signature. In ancient Kemet, the mothers were Mut, or Mu or Nu, Na, different, vowel sounds and so on and so forth. But within their crowns, they would have the serpent, they would have the snake, cobra, and they would have the vulture, right? So if we take those symbols, right, these are all Iyami symbols. And those who know, if you know, you know, right? But they're all symbols. They say they represent lower and upper Egypt, and they very well might, but they also represent spiritual insight, and they're being crowned of the divine mothers. Now you take that same imagery, right? The vultures, the serpents, the crowns, and so on. Let's move now from the Nile to the Niger, because there was a Nile to Niger trade route, right? So in Nigeria now, let's just say in West Africa now, you will look at the crowns, and the Oba's crowns, they're pointed, and they almost always have birds on them. In some form or another, you will see that's one of them, absolutely. But look at the other Ade crowns. I wish I could move, because my husband is an Oba. He had his crown is like that, and it has birds on it, and so on. But they also represent that. The idea of the vulture in West Africa, in East Africa, is associated with a nurturing bird. Vultures are very nurturing mothers. They will, do what they have to. In West Africa, it becomes translated to some forms of Iyami, but often Oshun, right? In various areas of and aspects of that. And the serpents represent the mothers, because the ancient mermaids, people connect the water spirits with mermaids and so on and so forth. So yeah, those are some of those symbols. But the mermaids are originally were depicted as half human, half snake, not half fish. But these are ancient stories. Now that's translated to Mami Watson. That's translated to water spirits. It's translated to water divinities and so on. But all of them, I don't know if you can't see this symbol back here. It's a whole Iyami Osameji image there. But those are things that represent and that crown that. So when a person is crowned in West Africa now, you still have to go through Iyami rites. There is not one Oba who doesn't go through Iyami rites. And those rites are secret, but they have to go through those rites in order for them, it's their authentication, in order for them to be confirmed. If they don't go through those rites, they don't have the protection. They don't have the authority. They don't have the ashe. But they all have to go through those same things, and those are the relationships there. You asked me another question, but I can't remember what you just asked me about.
I was trying to show the actual crown with the bird on it.
One of his crowns, but there's a bird. You can see it, the yellow one at the top. But that's not the one I was talking about either.
Okay, but it does have like that pointed, that kind of womb like type of look to it. I'm trying to find what you're speaking of. Let me see.
It's going. I don't think let's see. He just took pictures with it recently. It's not down there. Scroll up. I don't think he scroll up. It's not down there. Nope. You will see much of the same imagery and so on, and under many invasions.
That is like an Egyptian, like they actually had that in Egypt, the same type of pointed crown.
Yep.
So all that stuff comes from Egypt. A lot of stuff comes from Egypt and over to Nigeria.
Well, I don't know if they come from, or if what I understand about these mysteries is that many of them are continental wide. The assumption is always, because we can track them in ancient Egypt, that they came in Egypt first. That's not necessarily the case, although there were migrations. As I said, there were migration trade routes from the Nile to Niger trade routes and so on. And under many invasions of ancient Egypt, many of those priests and many of those people migrated west to West Africa. So there, and some migrated south and so on and so forth. They did not just stay there and adapt over many, you had many invasions over time. You had the Hyksos, the Asians that came in, and then you had the Romans that came in, and then you had the Greeks that came in, and over time, each one with their own regimes and so on. So many of them migrated. So you will see much of the same imagery in different forms, just what it looks like 3,000 years later.
I break down the name Eve is not much different than the name Yahweh, which is the name of the God that they took on to worship. It's just one jot, one tittle that's added to the name Eve to make the name Yahweh or Yahweh. And so they both mean to be and to exist in this realm. And so who said in the Bible, not one jot or tittle will be removed from this word? That was Christ. And so the yod was added to the name Eve to make their actual deity Yahweh. So I have some stuff to talk to you about.
Absolutely. Because a lot of those things, if you go down into biblical history and so on, then you begin to look at, well, what did the Canaanites, where did this stuff come from, right? By the time anything was written down, at least 6,000 to 10,000 years had already passed, right?
Yeah,
so,
true.
So you have to look at, the time period in which something was finally written and interpreted and so on. It was already oral history. Right. And
yes.
That oral history has its own nuances and so on and so forth. But if you look at those early things, I don't know much about Eve. I know where she came from because I studied the goodness gracious, Sumerians, and where the Sumerians and the Canaanites and so on and so forth, and their worship, and Babylonia and prior to that. And so all the way back to Tiamat. And many of the ancient ones that came before. It's like we look at these things as if they are universal truths, and we don't realize maybe that there was a much bigger story. By the time it got written down, it was already limited. Second, we have a tendency to interpret these things only through Western languages, and not realizing that there's a whole other language and an esoteric language with esoteric meanings behind many of those things. Let's take the Holy Spirit, for instance. We hear the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Most people don't know that the Holy Spirit is the Shekinah and it's feminine energy. It's the Ra. It represents the Ra.
That's right.
Again, she's the mystery. She's the one that you don't see, right? All those things go into understanding those things. The Eloah and Elohim, that's plural. Understand, male and female. They created he and them. That is not something that people like to recognize. These are all pieces of how the divine feminine shows up. Some of the earlier versions, they don't know that before there was Eve, there was Lilith. And there was a whole other thing that went with Lilith, and she's been demonized. That's one of the things that you will find as a trait of many patriarchal systems. I'm not talking about males. I'm saying patriarchal systems tend to demonize women and powerful women. And they make them in a way that is based on fear and suppression and so on. And you have to ask yourself, why is that? Because if women actually own their power, then you couldn't control them, right? Because all systems of power are dependent on controlling somebody else, or at least all systems of power, right?
Yeah.
Systems and regimes. So you have to recognize, are you the controlled or are you the controller, right? And in order to do that, that's how you manipulate things. In this society, we see how power dynamics show up. But like I said, in those biblical stories, they're much older. They're much more ancient. Most of what we know right now, it was written very recent. There's nothing literally original in the Hebrew language. Those books came out of the earliest writings of the Septuagint, right? Many of the Septuagint, there's 3 versions of the Bible: the Septuagint, the Vulgate, and the Peshitta. And all 3 of those are variations, but none of them are written in the Torah. There is no original Torah text. There are only copies that were written later on that came out of Egypt.
So, yes, out of the Qumran scrolls. You're talking the truth.
Yeah, a lot of those old stories, you have to go back, because humanity is bigger than 6,000 years old.
Yes. And doctor, and in the Peshitta, it's written that Christ says, "My mother, the Holy Spirit, took me by my hair." So it says in the Peshitta, it says that. So it's amazing that you're breaking this down. Thank you.
Absolutely. All of those things, they tie to more ancient traditions. And that's the thing. Once you understand, I'm a student of global world history, but especially indigenous and African, across the continent of Africa, and how it shows up in the Americas and so on. From the names, the names, the esoteric mysteries, the Kabbalah, the Tree of Life, those sciences, I've studied it all because it's been my life's work. So right now I am more in the West African. That's what my journey has taken me through. But as a student of the science, the spiritual sciences, and it goes all the way back. So I was always that kid. Even, and I hear what you're saying. I want to know where it came from, and where did that come from, and how did that come to be like that? And if you look and you unpack that, I wanted to unpeel the onion. And by unpeeling the onion, that's how you get to the truth. By studying various perspectives, that's how you find what is universal among all of them. And so for me, the mission is learning what is the universal truth. That's why I went back to nature in the end, because the one thing that's consistent before, right now, and will be after is how nature works, how nature shows up, and how the rhythm and the cycles of life show up in such a way that it gives us clues about who we are, our existence, where we're going, what we need to be doing, what we don't need to be doing, and how to evolve.
Okay, go ahead.
I was going to ask, so it's interesting when you talk about Iyami, and even like when you talk about everything, you talk about the Bible, right? There was these things called the vestal virgins, but they were also considered to be witches. Iyami is also labeled to be witches. Why are Iyami so frequently described as witches? Is translating Iyami as witches culturally inaccurate or spiritually misleading? And then I want to because when I want to get into the story that you told about even how when you talk about the Sibyls, and how they had this knowledge, but then they were suppressed in a certain way and all that stuff. So I want to get into that.
You don't have to remind me, because my menopause will kick in. I'll remember all of that. But what I can start off is with the witches.
The menopause crew is in the house.
Honey,
y'all.
Listen, we all going. I'm Perry. So.
Yes, I'm Perry menopausal.
I'm all day long. But let me start with the idea of witches, right? And let me start with what is a witch, right? What is a witch? A witch is a woman of power. The word witch comes from Wajeh. It comes from Wajeh, and Wu is Wajeh. And Wajeh in ancient Kemet, it was spelled with a T, Wajet, right? Again, I'm going back to where words came from and so on. So that was set in ancient Kemet, those words and how they evolved, and they became women of power and so on. And then what did we have? What happened to the witches is that we had the Catholic Church, who perceived them as a threat because they worshiped the great mothers and the honors and so on. And then they had the witch burnings. And so then witches became associated with evil in Europe. Right? The idea of witch, they became associated with Europe. Now, simultaneously, what was also happening? You had missionaries going to Africa. When you had missionaries going to Africa, they were bringing their religion and they were projecting it onto the indigenous people of Africa. And so they too associated, okay, there is a women of power. In Africa, you had women who owned land. They had a lot of economic power because they owned the marketplace. They governed the marketplace, and they had a relationship to the land. And between the land and the marketplace, they had the economy wrapped up for the most part, right? Men were the hunters for the in many of those areas. So when you have a regime coming in, and we're coming in to take control here, we got to assess who is in power. It is the women in power. They're in charge of the marketplace. They're in charge of the earth because they gather the herbs in a relationship. Remember, Yami is also tied to Mother Earth, and so on and so forth. So you have these dynamics that are there. And as a part of those dynamics, you're also bringing in your religion. So fast forward 400 or 500 years later, how they're associating, okay, any woman of power is a witch, right? So it became in such a way that if they accused you of being a witch, oh, that was to be afraid. That was to be frightening, right? And they've even reinterpreted what that meant to be something evil or someone doing something to you in a negative way, witchcraft or otherwise. But if we go back to the original origins of it, it wasn't that. Now, that being said, because of that, they tend to not associate witches with Iami, even though they're translated to. Now, both represent women and the feminine energy of power. I don't have a personal issue with the word witch or otherwise, but many people do. So I honor and I respect that. I just don't, because I understand the history going all the way back. But many do, and they associated that. And again, the way that you begin to control people is through fear. And it's fear that they're really dealing with. It's fear that, fear of the unknown, fear that someone may overpower you and have more power over you. And fear will motivate people and help you in order to, fear will motivate people. So one of the ways that you begin to control people is you tag a label onto it. And remember, tag the label, and give the label the definition, and now you can control people, right? They do that now. The administration we're under now, they label somebody a certain thing, and if they label you a criminal, then you must be a criminal because that's what they said that you were. And they begin to frame who you are, right? It's not who you define yourself to be. It's who someone else defined you to be, and they lived through that, and that became the truth, right? That people understood and that they live by and so on. But essentially it boiled down to power. So you have now societies who have now been fully and effectively colonized. And don't think for 1 minute that colonization has not influenced even the indigenous traditions, because it has. Just a few, 10 years ago, you couldn't even say Iami. You literally couldn't, you could only whisper it because people were so afraid, right? 10 years ago, you could not say it. 10 years ago, I did a whole course, a 40-hour, 40+ course on women's mysteries, East and West. And within that particular course, and it was to address the ancient mysteries of the African feminine energy and so on, because there was so much fear that was embedded in it. So much fear women had of themselves, of their mothers, of how they saw themselves. Anytime someone teaches you to be afraid and to think negatively about your own self, they're controlling you, and they're controlling the narrative. And they are controlling your narrative, not for your benefit, but for theirs.
Yes, I love it.
To go out and seek out who we are, who we were, what we have, how to use it, how to manage it, and how to make it how to bring it in such a way that we can empower ourselves, we can elevate ourselves, we can heal ourselves, and we can move forward.
Yes, I love how you say that. That's beautiful. When you talk about being afraid and what they told us about ourselves, I'm telling you, while you're talking, so much is going on in my mind when I listen to you, because when you say afraid of ourselves, they want us to not know the power of our biology as women, the power that we talked about menopause, but then everything in society is like, oh, childbirth, oh, it's such a curse, oh, menstrual cycle, such a curse, oh, menopause, such a curse. I want to ask you to talk to us about the divine connection of these stages of the maiden, the mother, and the crone. Talk to us about that divine connection and that femininity of our own biology, if you could do that.
Absolutely. And there's a few more. I speak about this in the course, one of the courses. It goes under the title The Blood Mysteries, right?
Yeah.
And the blood mysteries begin with a woman is a biological clock, and each shift and transition that she goes through is understood through the blood of some sort, right? And blood comes, ancestral blood is very much tied. So the first thing is that you're born through the woman, through a mother, and she's bleeding out, right? She's giving birth.
Yes.
Your next transition is your rite of passage when you enter into quote unquote biological womanhood by starting a menstrual cycle. That is the first blood, right? That opens you up to the ability to be a mother and so on and so forth. That's your first transition. It is biological. This is why womanhood can never be a political posture or an identity fully. And I know that it's going to offend some people. It's not intended to. It's that our very bodies tell us who we are and how we manifest that, right? So the body itself, it starts with a menstrual cycle. That's the first blood, or the second, depending on if you deal with birth. The next one, it used to be marriage, but marriage is marked by what used to be marriage, but it's really the first time you have sex, right?
Your hymen. Yes.
Your hymen is broken. That's the second. That's the next blood. There is a blood manifestation. That the veil that covered your womb has now been pierced. That's why women are associated again with the veils. It's that veil has been pierced. There is blood. There is life. The third one is when you actually give birth, right? So once you give birth, now that is another blood right. These are all biological blood rights of womanhood. So
yes, yes, it is.
The next part of that. The final one that happens is the ceasing of blood, and then the blood energy becomes internalized. So through internalization, that now you have a lot of internal power that has developed. That's why the elder women tend to be associated with more power than some of the younger. Each one has its own power. Each one has its own ashe, right? But the elder, now the blood is internal, and so elder women are both the biggest power, but also to patriarchal societies the biggest threat.
Oh, you are the truth of, you're an oracle. I had to stop and say this. No, you are an oracle. I bow to you because you are talking so much truth. I'm getting emotional. I go ahead. I had to say that one more time about the crone, about the elder. What's going on with the society? And I'll mute out and let you flow. Please, no pun intended.
It's that's the ceasing. The blood is internalized. So all the ashe that came from the menstrual cycle and so on, and it's released every month. Now it's all internalized. And so that internalization is like a cultivation, kind of like wine within oneself. And that becomes that's how your power builds, and so on and so forth. That's why when we talked about the elder women praying over you in the church, why they had more power, it's because of that. That ashe is internalized now. And because of that, they are more powerful, but they also are more threatening to people in any other system of power. And so you have societies that want to dismiss women. They want to put her over to the side. They want to call her crazy. They use labels to mitigate how they deal with her and to control and manage her image and so on. So a lot of the elder mothers don't get, people dismiss it. Oh, it's the old lady, and so on and so forth. And those old ladies are more
don't forget hag. Hag.
And they also defined womanhood as someone who is young and beautiful and so on and so forth, because that person you can control a little bit better than a woman who's seen some stuff. The woman who has seen some stuff is like, baby, you know, you see somebody, you see a couple, and a little young girl, bless her heart, and she's with this guy, and you can see that, oh no, he is not that one, but she can't see that. Right?
And they try to turn us against each other. They want to turn the young woman, the maiden, and the mother against the elder woman. They do that in society as a design, correct?
They do that as a society, but I'm going to tell you one thing as well. We've done it to ourselves as well. We've done it to ourselves as well, because many of the ancient traditions and the ancient mysteries and so on, they became extinct because the women were set upon themselves, the younger women versus the older women.
Can you tell that story of the Sibyls and how the women, the younger women with their husbands, they actually led to their own demise in.
Well, those are right. Those are two different stories. But I will say,
excuse me, doctor, is this about civil war amongst the women?
Yes and no. But let me just give you a brief. So in ancient societies, women had women's societies, right? Women's egg bays, and they held certain power councils and so on, in which their mysteries were taught. That's who took you through your rites of passage, whether it was eldership rites of passage or younger rites of passage, youth rites of passage. The elder women were the authorities within those societies. And so what you had are certain plans that were implemented by men, and many of them were implemented through missionaries, infiltrating their societies by getting the younger men who were married to the younger women to secure the secrets. So you would have those men who would say, hey, baby, if you tell me your secrets, and we can both be powerful, we can rule the world, right? And so you have these missions of the younger ones. The older women knew, nah, baby, you ain't getting none of this information. But the younger women, wanting their own power, they dismissed a lot of the younger women. And they dismissed a lot of the older women, thinking, oh, you old fashioned, oh, you this or whatever. But they also had their own mission. So a lot of them, there was disputes sometimes between the older women and the younger women, because the younger women wanted to get their wings earlier, and the older women was like, maybe in time it's all going to happen, and so on. So there's those dynamics. But what happened was, once the younger women started getting some of those mysteries and so on, they would tell their husbands, and their husbands would then tell the male councils. And the male councils would then take those mysteries, and even to this day, they still have some of those mysteries, but they would take those mysteries and then they turn them against the women. So then once they had those mysteries, there were new laws that were implemented. They implemented new laws that you cannot practice your own tradition, that you cannot do certain things, that if you do, you will be beheaded, you will be killed. Elder women became the threat. There's a I'm trying to remember in the Abibio Society, there are documents that are books that were written and documented as to what happened. And it happened all over Africa in many different societies, right? The Kikuyu had theirs. In West Africa, they had theirs. Each one had different, and they represented different things. For the Kikuyu, all of the women's menstrual cycles were synchronized. So they began, when they tried to take over the women's societies, they waited till the women were pregnant, because those women were warriors. And so they would fight. The Kikuyu women would. And they waited until they were all pregnant, and they began to do their attacks that way when the women were pregnant and they were at their most vulnerable time. So there's a lot of things that went into that. And so I will say that to say that, you know, when you're united, no one can separate you. The crack had to start from within, and it did. So we have to know that the crack started within. So that means that in order to repair it, it's got to start with us, and it's got to start with us coming together and so on. Now, as it relates to the Sibyls, because you brought up the Sibyls, the Oracle of Delphi, and so on and so forth, all of those North African prophetess types of things, those were all also aspects of Iami. And there were priesthoods that were associated with both the birds and the serpents. Remember, I said the snakes and so on are connected in those ways. And so many of those mysteries have traveled also to West Africa. They show up in different ways. But there has been a struggle between the feminine and the masculine, probably for about 2,000, at least 2,000 to 3,000 years. Because prior to that, many of the societies were goddess societies. They were mother societies. And then there was a shift that happened. And when that shift happened, it came slowly but surely, and it came across the planet. And part of it did have to do with planetary energies, and that there's a shift between the masculine, what we would call the masculine and feminine. But that shift is also over. That's why women are coming back into power now. There's this dynamic that happens through the cycles in the universe and so on that are tied to that. But all of those are connected together. Someone else offered, because there was something else we were supposed to mention, and I don't know how much time we got left because we've been on this for a while now. Aburu Aboye Aboshishe.
Yeah,
if you still
I
wanted
want to show that real quick. And by the way, that story about what she just mentioned is in her book Iyanifa. Please support her book. But yes, the actual image that we use today, we were discussing that. I said, okay, Iboru, Iboye, Iboshishe. And I, like, when I had used that image for the divine feminine that we did with the Pa, like I only had a limited understanding of it, but I know that, Chief, you're going to be able to break it down way more. But yes, these three women, Iboru, Iboye, Iboshishe, Abaru, Aboye, Aboshishe, these are the three women. And yes, please describe what actually that story. I think you said it was Ogun Meiji or
Ogunda Meiji. So
Ogunda Meiji.
Aburu Aboye Aboshishe is a greeting that you greet when you greet a Babalawo or an Iyanifa, and or someone who is a Ifa priest. That is a traditional greeting. And most people don't know. Many people will interpret it as the offering has been made and the offering has been accepted. But it actually comes from a story in one of the Odus called Ogunda Meji. And that particular story has to do with Oromila, who was the prophet who wanted to have a conversation and communicate with Olodumare. And there were three women, three Iyami, that guarded Olodumare being the Most High, right? And so in trying to connect with Olodumare, he had to go through these women, and because he had to do that, he had also passed their test and so on. So they gave him test to overcome. Oromila was a wise one and was able to, but part of that meant that he had to undergo trials, and he had to undergo figuring out some things, and part of that had to do with what Aburu, Aboye, and Aboshishe represented. He had to give them offerings. And those were the names. Aburu is a name. Aboye is a name. Aboshishe is a name of these different aspects of feminine powers that protect Olodumare. Some stories will say that he eventually married them and they became his wives. And as a result, you have to greet him. You have to greet his wives before you greet him. Aburu, Aboye, Aboshishe. So there are different interpretations, and there are different translations that will show up. But Aburu, Abo, remember I said Abo and Ako, Aburu, that they all begin with Abo. In that regard, they represent the feminine energy. So it is a literal acknowledgement of the feminine energy. And the Aboye is Aboye, and Aboshishe is Abosise. So anyway, those are the feminine energies. They are said to protect Olodumare or guard Olodumare. They are said to also sometimes be the wives of. Well, yeah, just don't worry about spelling it right now. In I will say this in Cuba in the diaspora, they often use I, and so they will say I. Yeah, there you go. They will say Iburu and with an I and so on. But essentially, that's the bottom line. That's what it represents. So it's an affirmation, and that's why he had to give them these offerings in order to connect with Olodumare, and they accepted those offerings, and that's why it's translated as such.
Can an uninitiated person honor the divine feminine without entering restricted practices?
Sure. It just depends on, yeah. I mean, if you're a woman, why can't you? Now, what you do, what you know, what you have exposure to, and otherwise, that's.
Right. So why shouldn't rituals or offerings associated with Iami be copied from social media?
Because you don't know what the hell you're doing, and you don't even know if it's true. Right. The biggest thing that I wish people would understand is critical thinking and common damn sense, to be honest with you. They're gifts. They are essential gifts, critical thinking and common sense. Listen, just because somebody write it, let me say this across the board, because just because it's written doesn't make it true, doesn't make it accurate. Lies can be written. People can make it up. You don't even know. Many people have mental illness and they write stuff and they say stuff. People don't even know. Baby, that person is Betty is crazy. That person has a mental illness. They don't even know. But you don't know that. So if you're following stuff that's just on the internet, you need to follow something by elders that have had some experience with it, right? Because you can get yourself into a lot of trouble calling down stuff you don't know nothing about.
That's right.
You can get yourself, you can get yourself in a mess of trouble calling stuff you don't know, you don't understand. And usually it's your own ego that's making you want to do that. So the very fact that you haven't learned to subjugate to subject your ego to a little self-restraint by itself should tell you, I don't need to be doing this, right? Because it's the ego, it's the search for power, it's the being nosy and you haven't laid the foundation yet. It's the impatience, your inability to get along with someone or at least get along with an elder who can teach you. Because now you think you know it all, now you think you know better, now and it's a fuck around and find out type of moment, to be honest.
I know that's right.
It really is. Yes, you can honor them. You can give offerings. You can take them to a full moon and you can give offerings at the tree and so on and so forth. But don't assume you know. And it's just unwise. It's just unwise to try. It's like this, and I use this a lot. If someone wanted to learn how to drive, right? You can read what you want to read. You can look on YouTube. You can ride in a car for years. Does that teach you how to drive?
Nope.
You won't know how to drive until you get behind that wheel.
You can play video games thinking you know how to drive.
You can play video games thinking you know how to drive, and you don't know how to drive. And when you do finally want to learn, you need somebody next to you who knows how to drive.
Yes, that's right.
Who can help you. So that's the same thing. There's not much different. Your YouTube, it may or may not work.
Right.
Because you don't know. And the whole key is you don't know. So it's helpful to find those. Now, I will say this. I know that it's hard. It's hard to find people who will teach you. It's hard to find people who will show you. And I, for one, I do have a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience with a lot of things. Those of us who have been around and may know some things are also very picky and very selective in who we talk to about it and share with, right?
Yeah.
And because of character issues. Character is the inability to have self-control, self-restraint, your own mind, the ego, and all of that stuff. Who wants to deal with all of that? I'm not going to argue with you. I'm going to let you do you. But so that a lot of elders do hold back until you show that, hey, I am in this. It's not enough to say it. You have to show it through your actions, through your behavior, through your character over time. And because that's how I ended up getting it.
So that's when we talk about, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
When you talk about initiates and the selected that have been chosen, and these people start saying secret societies as if it's something negative, that's where it's something positive, right? You choose your student, you choose the initiate.
It's a protection. You don't just share fire, like the learning how to use fire, for instance, right? Fire can be very, very helpful. It can cook our things, it can warm our houses, it can burn the whole damn village down.
Yeah.
Right? So it is a protection. You don't teach a child of 2 or 3 on how to start a fire.
Right.
They're not mature enough. They're not mature enough to handle it, to know what to do if there's a problem, to how to manage it. They're not mature enough. And maturity, while you can recognize it in the physical, as a child, right? But spiritual maturity, you can be 50 and still be a spiritual child. You can still be immature. So maturity doesn't equal age. It should, but it doesn't always.
You know, we have talked so much, man. We have covered the gambit. This has been a beautiful show. But I do want to cover one last final thing when it comes to EME about like, because this is a very a topic, I want to like, just for those people, when it comes to like some things like, sexual abuse, physical abuse, where does the EME come into play with a lot of like, when it comes to exploitation, trafficking, violence against women? Where does the EME stand with a lot of this thing? What teachings of EME reveal about the condition of women today?
I'm trying to figure out how to put that in a small summary in that regard. I will say this in general, that of course the abuse of women in general is not valued, nor is it appreciated, nor is it supported, right? It absolutely is not. You create a certain level of spiritual debt that can carry on into other lifetimes. But the same thing also applies to any abuse of power and so on. When it comes to the things that we experience right now as a soul, when it comes to things that we experience as a soul, we have to understand that it transcends just our individual lives, right? It goes into past lives, it goes into pre-birth plans, and so on and so forth. There are lessons that come with these truths, these understandings, and so on and so forth. But in general, when it comes to EME, they don't support it. Of course, they don't support abuse. But a lot of times, those that do abuse women, they suffer in other ways, right? They suffer in different ways. Sometimes it can appear that they got away with it and they didn't get away with it. They're just not going to suffer in the same way. Some, they could, lose their minds, right? Some, they can lose their wealth. Some, usually when a EME is addressing something, again, on one hand, how it gets addressed could change, could last lifetimes. But also within a small period of time, how it can be addressed is loss of something, loss of your mind, loss of your money, loss of your family, some form or another. When there's some violation that has happened, it often shows up as a block in some way. But they're not necessarily, it's not always immediate. You have to sometimes see it through over time. Some of the stories that we have about how justice has shown up is justice didn't stop in one lifetime. You have people who have inherited generational and ancestral debts and debts from past lifetimes, and they're experiencing these things now. So there's a lot of deeper things that play into why we might experience it and how that justice might show up. It's not just one dimensional in that regard.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, one day we'll talk. In the course that I talk about, it talks about the mysteries of the veils and how the ancient mothers in different traditions and how they show up with the ancient mothers and how we have issues of rape and molestation and sexual assault and how that shows up and the repercussions of that and so on and so forth. There are whole stories. There are whole ancient priesthoods that are built on these stories and these narratives that are at least tens of thousands of years old. So there's layers. It's layers. It's hard for me to say one thing.
We're not going to cover EME in one live stream. We're going to have to do a whole series about EME because I had to skip through because we haven't even covered.
You had 37 questions.
We haven't scratched the surface when it comes to EME and the energy that is actually existing right now with Osameji. We didn't even break down Osameji down to the core.
Well, there's a lot that's there. I will say this: Osameji is not just EME. Osameji is transformation. It shifts. It's change. It's the winds of change. It is the feminine energy, but it is also the water energy. It is also things that happen as a result of the water. It is winds. It can represent death. It can represent complete changes of regimes. In some ways or another, for what it fundamentally means is never underestimate any woman. That's one. But also for men, and I always say that because it's always a balance, is that it is important for men to tap into their inner feminine side, not as a way to emasculate them, but as a way to tap into. It's only through learning calm, learning inner peace, learning self-restraint in that regard, that they can become balanced. Right? It's only in aligning yourself with that which you came from, your own mother. that you can find some balance. Your own mother, but not just your mother, your wife, your daughters, your sisters. You will find out, it's interesting. A lot of men who might have been abusive to women or might have done women wrong, they end up finally having children. They have all girls.
Love it.
Man, you listen.
so
You wonder
beautiful.
why these dudes have an all-girl baby.
They have all
wow,
girls.
it's a lesson. Oh, wow, that's crazy.
Wow. I would like to, you're leaving and I hate to see you go, but I know your time is valuable. I would like to say, because the climate out here about these gender wars, I want to give this to you and let you expound on it. Men were given the gift of brawn. They're stronger. We could see their bodies are bigger in general. You know, they have more strength. Why do they fight against us having our strength, which I heard you say earlier, our spiritual strength? You say the men go out and fight and we fight with the spirit and in another way. Why is it so hard? And I'm talking about the men who are calling themselves, imams and spiritual leaders. Why is it so hard for them to just realize we were given a spiritual strength as women, and let the whole world, men and women, realize that. Let the divine feminine come forward again. Will you talk to us about that? Them realizing that we do have that spiritual strength, please.
Well, I can't speak for a man because I'm not a man. But what I can speak for is how power shows up and insecurity, right? And that those who are in power or wish to be in power, often those who seek out power, seek to be called leaders, seek to be called. Some people, leadership is thrown unto them, right? And it's because it's their natural calling. Some people, they seek it out and they want to control it and they want to hold on to it as best they can. And that comes not from power, but from insecurity. So anytime, and this is based on even, my own relationship with my husband and so on and so forth, a man that is secure in himself will never feel threat from a woman asserting and being who she's supposed to be. A man who is secure in himself. But many are not secure in themselves. Some truly believe they are following God's law. But again, it's an interpretation, because if you actually look at it, then you will understand that that was just never the case, right? But again, many of them thirst for power. And we have within our own communities, right? Because there's power and then there's power. Within our own communities, particularly men of color, and they struggle with finding their power. True power, right, within. And some of it is because it is a derivative of captivity that came for hundreds of years. You have a certain level of confidence that many African-born continental men have, that a lot of men in America don't necessarily have. It doesn't mean they don't have it, but sometimes there is a different dynamic that is there. And at the same time, wherever they are in the world, those in power often want to stay in power. In order to do that, they have to keep someone else not in power. So they feel a threat. Men also, a lot of that energy, testosterone in and of itself is a naturally competitive type of energy. And so anytime you have a situation where that person is a competitor, they compete, they perceive any type of power as a competition, and then they want to dominate it so that they can assert power or dominance over it. So I can't speak to how do we. I can only say that the more that we are willing as women to stand in our own power and not fall for it, not in that way, and learn wisdom, the less control they have over it. The less control they have. And so, we have choice. You have choice whether or not you're going to fall in line in this particular path. You have choice if you're going to be with this particular man, whether he honors you or not. If that love that you have doesn't honor you, doesn't respect you, then is it really love, and is it really worth it?
Wow. You know what you just said, Dr. Kumari? We go, Genesis and I, sometimes I'm not doing it anymore, but I would go to some of these forums where men, it's called the manosphere, and men, they say so much misogyny. Anything you can think about a woman, she's ugly, she's fat, she's old, she's a HOE, everything these men sit and do. And there are some women who are beautiful young women who will sit there silently and nod their heads yes, and just so they can get that kind of love and acceptance. But it's not what you just said. It's not really, you know what I mean? It's not love. They just want to be accepted by these men so badly that they will sit there and agree with all these terrible things that are said about women just to get some type of love and be called feminine.
Yeah,
so you really
having insecurity, right? So we tend to mirror things in people, right? if you're insecure, you're likely going to get an insecure man. He's just going to hide it under the guise of masculinity. Right? There's really a mirror there. It's an you're insecure about standing on your own. He's insecure. You're just dealing with your insecurities differently. Right? So that person who wants to put someone down, who wants to bully someone, who wants to, whatever they want to do, that's coming from a place of insecurity. It's coming from a place of actual fear and even resentment. Many men who are in that zone, they're mad at their mama, they're angry at their mama. Right?
I told you she's an oracle.
There's a lot of layers to that.
Yes.
Their mother, or whatever the case is, where they saw, and the mind is very complicated. People are not one-dimensional. Genders or sex, they're not one-dimensional. So there are many layers to it, but you will find misery loves company. Birds of a feather flock together. And so, if you find a group of men, a couple of insecure men, they probably share some type of trauma bond of some type of issue with the woman. And they're feeding that energy. And until they understand it's toxic and it's undermining them. And because the mind can create things, the more resentment and the more you find to blame, the more issues you have. And then you find more people to blame on those issues rather than saying, you know what? I need to own my part. I need to be accountable. And I need to make the shifts in me in order to make my life differently and stop blaming everyone else, trying to control everyone else, trying to undermine everyone else because I'm not where I want to be.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And as far as the women, we're all here learning lessons. And sometimes you're going to be some of those lessons mean you'll be put in a situation where you're forced to stand up for yourself, where you're forced to be in a situation to know what love is and what love is not. And part of your lesson might be discernment, knowing what it is and what it's not. We fall in love often with what we hear. They say, the elder mothers used to say, women fall in love with what they hear. Men fall in love with what they see. Both are foolish.
Oh. Have you been called an oracle? Have you ever been called an oracle before? Because you are saying all truth. We are blessed to be here with you. Yeah, you're right. We've both of it is misleading, right? Falling in love with what you see and what you hear. Yep. That's not everything, is it?
Has been used and she'll say, he say this, he say that, he say such and such, he said such and such. They're listening to what he says. That's why those brothers know how to mac. Back in the day, I don't know what they call it these days. When they know how to mac, they're like, whoa, he talking good. He talking nice and good, right?
He say a lot of stuff.
He say a whole lot of stuff, right? He sound like you know what he's talking about. You don't know jack from nothing. It's just
No, or they say, excuse me, they say he talked me right out of my drawers.
Yeah. You gave your power away over someone.
Yeah.
To be honest, and in the same way, because you can look at my husband was like, oh, there will never be a day I will fall for a big booty and a smile. Because that's the quickest way. Now in that regard, this is family stuff. His father was killed because of a woman. And he set him up in that regard. So, following women in terms of because of their beauty, because of their behinds, because of their physical features is foolish. It's foolish. It's that every girl homie. It's not the girl that's always dressed up. Again, you're being misled. You don't have discernment because you're looking at what you see, and what you see has nothing to do with character. It has nothing to do with what's underneath. But you don't want to be, you want arm candy, but you don't really want a wise woman, because a wise woman is going to force you to also grow. Wise woman is going to elevate you. A wise woman is going to tell you, baby, I think you need to change this. This is going to help you better.
Or don't listen.
And if you're a wise man, then you'll go ahead and listen. It doesn't mean you can't listen to you. You can listen to both, because wisdom don't have to have a gender. It doesn't have to be a male or a female. If it's wisdom, it's wisdom. And if
although in the Bible, it does say wisdom. It says wisdom is a she, but you're absolutely right. It's for all of us.
Because it's checking eyes, so feminine energy.
Yes.
I wish I had a explosion every time you say something.
I wanted to drop bombs, but I didn't want to overstep your thing, Genesis.
I don't find no threat. This is how we share. This is how we share. And learn. I don't get out often.
Hold on, I'm gonna just do an explosion on everything. Boom.
We'll be dropping bombs all through her conversation.
You wouldn't even be dumb if I could hit an explosion every time you say something. Boom, it'd be just man.
I really enjoyed speaking with you. I would love to bring you back. We need you. You are the water. I mean it. You're the cleansing water. You're the water that quenches the thirst, because we must have more of this energy, which is divine feminine energy. Even though you're speaking, you balance. You're not against the man. You balance. You say it over and over. It's for all of us, but we still need that divine femininity to come and teach. So what I'm saying is, when are you going to come back? Because we need you back soon. We need you back. We really do.
I'm relatively available. I'm typically a recluse. But I'm around, so we're invited.
And listen,
Wow,
I'm gonna
see,
say this is that
And my husband is also, he will speak a lot of, he is also an advocate of the divine feminine as well. He's
oh,
not
that's
one
beautiful.
of those guys that speak down. He's, like I said, he heard me upstairs talking and he wanted to come and help it. Here you go.
Oh, I love it. I love
That
it.
was
Would he
beautiful.
come
He
on?
kept
Would you
looking.
come
I'm
on
gonna show you.
together? If we could bring you on
We've been on
together.
together once before. I think we talked about marriage in one of your
Oh.
shows.
Yeah, I had a show on with them both on. Yeah, like
Yeah,
they
yeah.
Oh, you did? Genesis, you've been hiding her from me. What's wrong with
No,
you
I
gatekeeping
haven't.
like this?
It's been on my show. You just have to watch it. You've been
They
watching
just
my show.
long show. Maybe they're
Well,
breaking down,
I would
but-
love to bring her over to the, to the
HOK?
platform because we
Yeah,
have to,
HOK.
we need her to, and her husband to
Yeah.
bring in, and it's such a beautiful thing when a gentleman, when a man, a king comes in and says, yes, this
He's
is my
literally a
wife.
king. He's
with
literally
whom-
a king. He's like
Oh,
literally.
he is wonderful. I was going to do a Bible reference that I know that Dr. Kumari would catch. This is my wife with whom I am well pleased. Remember the transfiguration of Christ, where God. Well, I would love that. So definitely, I would talk to Genesis. It's a real pleasure. The pleasure is all mine to meet you and sit with you and bask in your knowledge. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to meet you as well. It was good to talk. There's so much to share. There's so much to unpack when it comes to the feminine, when it comes to spirituality. I'm available. I'm available. I don't get out often and I don't talk often, but I'm trying to do a little bit more now.
And you know what? I was trying to explain that the community needs EFI because EFI community has been separated so long, like they just kind of like are recluse, right? They are very in their own bubble and they don't really come out much to really talk about EFI. But I'm like, okay, this is the time now with the OSA and Otora. I believe that this is the time it needs to be out more, and I believe that that's even like the Otora Meiji. That's why it came out because people need to hear more from the EFI community about what they know because there's so many misconceptions. They think that we're witchcraft. They think that we're evil, and we're just out here. Just
almighty voodoo.
Woo!
Wow. You know what? You're right. You're right.
You know, we've gotten a really bad rap, our tradition, but the bottom line is that it's really the ancient tradition that if people actually just do like the research, they'll find out so much more. And yes, I will. I think that it'd be a great thing to bring. But let me also promote, okay?
Yes.
Her Ori Institute and the IAMI
Oh,
course
wow.
for those women. If you want, I've been showing it the whole time. If you want to, she has an entire course where she talks about that she's done for like, I don't know how many years.
The course is actually 10 years old. Some of the information is old and some of it is outdated because I've grown. But it's two courses. So one is the East and the other is the West. So you can take them individually or you can take them as a course. But I unpack a lot of different ethnic groups, a lot of different women's mysteries, a lot of different divine feminine goddesses, if you will, Neteru or Orisha. There's just so much that there's just not enough time. And so this was done, like I said, it was done 10 years ago. And each class is probably at minimum 2 hours, 2.5 hours or so long. So it's it's a lot of information. And it takes some time to get through. But there's the East, there's the West, and there's a lot to learn. You will learn. I'm probably going to turn this into some type of certification at some point because there's so much.
Yes, you're reading my mind. That's what you should do. That I'm interested in that course for sure. You cover all different. You say East West. It's not only African, right? It's all worldwide.
Nope, because it's East African and West African.
Oh, I got you. Okay, that's what I want to clarify.
South African and I did some North African, but we have a lot of European women have done a lot on the goddess and the divine feminine in Europe. And a lot of people have done African history from an African male's perspective. What we don't have is a lot, and this is what motivated this course. We don't have a lot, even to this day, speaking about African women's mysteries, and not just one. So this wasn't just about like IAMI is one of the titles, but IAMI by that name is within the Yoruba. But there are other feminine mysteries and feminine traditions. That's why I call it African women's mysteries, because it's the stuff we don't know. It's the stuff that's been a mystery. It's stuff that is a tradition. When I first put this course out, I really limited who could even take it in the first place, because there are many people who will take your stuff and use it against you. And so we got people in the White House right now that took our own history created Project 2025 to use it against us.
Yes.
So there's that. But in this particular case, now it is what it is. And there are lessons, there are exercises that are there, but there's information we should just know, and it can empower us. it can be the springboard for a number of other things. But I tell people, if you're going to start with the East, ideally, because those are the more older ones that we know and we recognize, and they set up the understanding for the West. So within the East, we deal with the Kikuyu, we deal with some of Nubia, we deal with a lot of the different variations of the female Neteru and their origins and so on and so forth. We also move up to North Africa, to the Berbers, to those areas, because we miss a lot of those in those areas. And then the West, we deal with the Dagara, we deal with the Yoruba, we deal with Igbo, we deal with the Mami Watas and the Ewe and so on and so forth. We deal with a lot of different groups and areas of women's feminine mysteries. So there's just a lot there.
You know, I was like saying, because lately there's been like this new movement of that we're not from Africa, that we are from America, and so I wanted to like actually address the fact, because some people like, well, I'm not from Africa, I'm from America. That we didn't have a slave trade, we didn't come from a slave, we were already here, and so they would probably look at this and be like, oh, well, why would I watch a thing about Africa? We're not connected to Africa, blah blah blah. So what would you say to that?
They don't have to look. I don't argue with people about what they believe about themselves. We are into identity politics right now, and people nowadays totally ignore facts for fantasies and feelings. And I am not that type of person. I'm going to look at the facts, not your feelings, not what you like or dislike. I'm a scientist in that way, right? So if you don't feel like it, that's fine. I'm not asking, I'm not begging, and it won't make me or break me if you watch it or if you don't. It really, really doesn't. Right. What I can say is that yeah, I'll just leave it at that. It wouldn't matter to me. I don't argue with people over who I am, what I represent, what I say, or what I do. Believe what you want to believe. But, you know, I'm not trying to convince anyone. Those who it's for will get it. Those who it's not, it will go completely over their head. And it's not right. For them. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with people not knowing some things because they don't always need to know.
I love it. You know,
there's a whole thing. When the student is ready, the teacher will come. It may not be their time.
Right. I love it. I love that. Yes, just move forward. And another thing is, if you don't resonate with it, don't stick around. Please go to the next room. Go forward. Don't stick around and criticize it and try to tear it down. Just move forward if it's not for you. I love that. Yes.
Yeah. I used to be into. I told her I used to do the debates and so on and so forth. And you get older and you're like, for what? For what? You know,
I love debating.
You don't pay not one bill. You know, you don't affirm me. Why should I care? You know, if you want to know, I'm here to share my own experience from what my studies and what my research and what my understanding has shown. That's all it is. You know, at this point, I know that my ancestors, they were African. I did have some that identify with Native American, some that are in the Dawes Roads, but it was maybe 1 or 2%. But I have 80% that have direct African DNA ancestry, and I will not deny that. I won't also deny those that were here. I won't make up stories. I won't, you know, I don't have any need to try to convince, because the truth is that my identity transcends my body and my human existence even in this moment. I am a divine being and all of that. This is a temporary vessel I am in, and who I truly am transcends all of that. So I don't have a need to get into the identity politics in that way anymore.
So I wanted to let people, man, this has been a great live. I want to let people know that in 20 minutes we're going to talk about the Kabbalah, and we're going to go into the Merkabah light, the hidden origins of Abraham, and also get into the Kabbalah on that level. And that's going to be on House of Consciousness, as well as Debate Coliseum and the Paz Rise, and we're gonna just do a whole thing. If you want to, I mean, I know you got things to do, Chief, but if you want to come up with something,
we're on 3 hours now. It's time
right.
Three glorious,
2.5,
almost three glorious hours of this. Was just like I said, this was a bath for a lot of our people in our community. They need to bathe in this. So thank you,
man. Listen, I appreciate you so much. I mean, Chief, you are awesome, Chief. I mean, please go to her. I've been summer jamming her websites. Please see her websites. I'm trying to find it
real quickly. I don't mean to, because it's in my mind. I want to ask a question. So it's a course that you can actually, it's a live course that you teach, or is it something you can purchase and then just do on your own? Because I want to know when.
Last 10 years ago. So it's recordings. So it's
okay. Gotcha.
It's self-paced recordings, and so on. I'm still kind of interactive, but there are assignments there. But I'm not really grading those assignments anymore, not like that. But they are, there's a lot of information for your own edification.
Definitely
At some
checking
point,
into
I
that.
may start another series. It's just that my time is very, very limited, and I've got so many responsibilities that I just don't have time to do a lot of the updates and things of that nature, and I just don't have the energy. And
You have like different. It's a whole entire institute. It's a whole
I have,
entire.
well, the Ori Institute is one thing. That is our school.
Guys, go check out her Ori Institute. Go to her website, Ayeli Kumari. Please support her. I wanted to play this again for those in the back that didn't get to see it. The original that's not sped up, because this is very sped up. If you want to hear it slowed down, it's on my site. It's under the same name. Please, go and check it out. She also does a thing about Otura Meiji. She does a show about that, and breaking down Otura. She just did Osa. And much love, guys. And I was going to do a show about the elites. I don't know if I want to do that tonight. Because I want to really sit down and really break this whole thing down about the elites. But I think that this is a good segue into the elites, because again, knowledge was stolen, right? And so what do the elites believe in? What are they thinking, right? So I don't know, maybe I might do this because tomorrow I have like a lot to do, but I'll probably do this tomorrow night with the elites and really break down what they really believe and things like this. Just so that I could have the audience there. But I wanted like just to do this because it was brought up about like the minstrel and this, that, the other. So she was just there talking about that. But much love, guys. I'm getting sleepy, but shouts out. Thank you for like watching thus far. Like I said, you could like see the other, if you go on my channel and just go through it, you'll see so much. I have interviewed people from cults. I mean, just go on my page and just click on some videos, guys, because I've done a lot. I've done so many interviews, discussions, talks. Like, please, like, check out the detail. I mean, this is like a pretty much like my life's work. It's like an archive of all the conversations that I've had with people, and so I appreciate you coming into my mind to see this. How scatterbrained I am, but just go and watch all the stuff, all the interests. I really want to cover the Nolan story, but I don't even know if I want to get into that. It's just sad. It's sad. So, the next one is going to be discussing. I'm gonna show you a little bit, just a little bit. Baal, Malak, and Epstein, sacrificial cults, and the elite. I really want to get into like what are the elite really up to? I'm gonna break that down. I'm gonna do it tomorrow because I want to really take my time and really break and get into it, guys. And it's gonna be open panel. Anyone that wants to join. But let me just give you a little bit of like the context of things. Go.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Lifting the Lamp. I'm Frata Eleftheria, and this video is going to be a bit darker. I'm going to go down some dark roads tonight, and it's because I'm going to be touching upon some topics which will sound familiar if you've been watching social media on the recently released Epstein files. I'm going to be talking about human sacrifice. And I'm going to be talking about the dark cults and the dark gods which demand such sacrifice. Specifically, the cult of Baal. And I wanted to talk about this because there's been a lot of chatter about Baal since the release of the latest Epstein files because, well, frankly, there's a lot of material in there which sounds a lot like what these sacrificial cults were doing back in ancient times. But the name Baal has also specifically come up in one particular document, which mentions the god Baal and seems to make a connection between Epstein and Baal. More on that in a moment, but it's brought attention to Baal. So I wanted to present some information in this video on the god Baal, where Baal comes from, what the cult of Baal practiced, but also just addressing some of the conflations and misconceptions about this topic, because it can get quite sensationalistic and people can be too quick to draw parallels between things or equate things. So I want to try and navigate some of that as well.
So that is what we're going to like go into. That's going to be my next video. We're going to get into Baal. We're going to get into the cult of Baal. We're going to get into human sacrifice, child sacrifice, all that stuff. And it's going to get kind of dark. You know, I might not even monetize it. I mean, because I think this subject is a really important subject. And, you know, so we're going to get into that. So tomorrow at around 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. That's what we're going to be doing. We're going to like get into this because I got to wait till the evening comes. So it's not like, oh, you know. So that's what we're going to be discussing. So I hope that you guys, you know, just put your thinking caps on, do some research and look forward to it. I will see you guys tomorrow. Much love. Peace.
Just when I thought I couldn't find my way out, yeah, I searched the God in me to find my way out. I know it can seem way out, but the Creator flows to and through me from way out. I'm talking way out, yeah, yeah, yeah. See if you believe in the God in you.